I'm Terry Kempton.
And I'm Layla Tromble.
Yesterday afternoon, I wrote a piece called Black Lives Matter Needs White Bodies.
Yep.
And somebody then sent me an email that said, hey, Egberto, you need to speak to these two young ladies out here. So I said, let me do that. I contacted you guys and you were gracious enough to grant me this interview. So tell me about your little project.
Well, thanks so much for asking and for contacting us. We started White Nonsense Roundup because we feel like there's a need for white people to address our own. Like, we need to be out there having difficult conversations about race, about systemic racism, and really calling each other out when that comes up in social media.
Because the reality, unfortunately, is that white folks are much more prone to listening to other white folks. Mm-hmm. And if us other white folks are not willing to have the uncomfortable conversation, then the conversation doesn't happen, unfortunately. And we just decided that maybe we should start a way for us to do that. And we've also seen so many of our friends of color, our black friends, who are currently exhausted, frankly, by everything going on in the world. And
then additionally, we're asking them to spend the time and energy to educate white people, to hand out ally cookies if someone is doing a good job. Like, it's just an unfair burden of proof that we're putting on already marginalized and oppressed people, and that we can really lift some of that burden by taking it on ourselves. And I mean, I think something that white people are generally uncomfortable with is hearing that good intentions don't necessarily solve problems. You know, that we may say, well, I didn't mean to take advantage of the color of my skin by getting that loan, but I did. But I didn't mean to, and because I have good intentions, then I'm not part of the problem. But like with all good intentions, if you're not actually saying or doing something, then you're contributing to the problem. And so this movement was really born out of that kind of frustration of like, there is something that we can do, and it's uncomfortable, and it's essential.
How it works is kind of interesting. So why don't you tell me in your words how it works? I have your document right in front.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've just kicked this off, so I'm sure there's going to be a few kinks in the system to work out. But essentially, we have a Twitter handle as well as a Facebook page. We also have Instagram, and there's an email address that people can contact us through as well. And our hope is that if someone is having a situation where some white person is coming on their page and spouting some nonsense, that they can tag our Facebook page, and then one of our volunteers can go from our Facebook page to that conversation and take on the burden of educating whoever that is.
Where are you guys located?
We're in Washington State. Yeah, we're in a small college town in the northwest part of the state.
Okay, you know how that's going to come across to the real America, right?
Our neighbors?
Yeah.
Right. How do you intend to handle that you are some elitist white, or both of your elitist white persons who have white guilt, and that's the reason why you're doing this?
Well, I think that the label of white guilt is kind of a way of changing the conversation away from how we can combat racism. To be honest, we all need to be feeling some guilt. This is an imbalanced, unfair society. And so it's okay to feel uncomfortable. And we don't get to just write it off and say like, oh, that's just white guilt. I refuse to be guilted. Instead, we need to say that feeling comes from somewhere. And the only way that I can move past that feeling is to get involved and do the right thing.
Whenever we're talking about white issues, because, you know, there are communities of color in many areas are marginalized, etc. Now, one interesting thing is, how do you talk to somebody in Appalachia in the manner that you guys are speaking about white issues and the people of color being aggrieved and not necessarily white Appalachians?
It's complicated talking to poor white folks about racism and about privilege. It is complicated, but I'm a big proponent of meeting people where they are. Mm-hmm. You know, of trying to have those like, it doesn't have to be an academic conversation necessarily. Right. It can be a conversation that comes from personal experience. When I was young, my family was absolutely poor. We lived in a cabin with no electricity. But also, my parents being white, upwardly mobile white folks got out of that, and
so you're saying that there was really as a person in your skin, there's a pathway that was a bit larger than somebody else's.
Exactly. And it's, the thing that I've often found myself saying is, no one is saying bad things don't happen to white people. We're just saying they don't happen to you because you are white. And that is the critical difference.
So one of the big goals that we have is to boost the signal of voices of color who are addressing this and who are stating very clearly, this is what's going on, this is what it's like to live it, and this is what we need from the white community. And there's no replacement for voices of color, so we're hoping to help boost that signal and share some of those voices to people who may not otherwise have connections. And so if it's someone in Appalachia who's trying to figure out kind of what's going on and where do I fit in with it, we can say, here are some essays. Could you consider reading this? I think that there are a lot of people who have compassion inside them and aren't sure how to break through the kind of fear that's dominating our culture right now to really tap into that compassion. And so that's something that we want to do too.
Well, I expect your Facebook page to start flying through the roof, because I have a feeling you'll have a lot of people who would want you to help send folks their way to help in the discussion, because right now it is pretty bad. Let's quickly go over again how people reach you.
Yes, you go ahead.
Yeah, the easiest, we can Facebook message directly from the White Nonsense Roundup Facebook page. Mm-hmm. They can email us at whitenonsenseroundup@gmail.com. Twitter at No White Nonsense. And
Instagram
is also White Nonsense Roundup is our handle on Instagram as well. And they can contact us through any of those platforms. Our website is still in development. The official whitenonsenseroundup.com is still in development, so that will be a thing, but it's not yet.
So in effect, right now, this is whoever gets in now as advisors in your group will be getting in at the beginning. But this is something that you guys are doing to better make America a better place, a more inclusive place,
That's our hope. That's our hope.
And at the very least, people can always follow the page on Facebook or periodically check in with the Twitter handle just to have those resources coming through on their wall that they can use unofficially at any time.
Yeah, that's a big hope too, is that we'll just be a good place for people to come find resources to handle stuff on their own if they want, but just an easy place to find good resources, good links, stuff to just help
graphics,
the conversation,
studies and analogies and, all of those things that have worked when we've had those difficult conversations with people, so that's a resource. And of course, if people are really motivated and they want to get involved, then they can, contact us and ask to be a volunteer wrangler, is what we're
calling them currently.
And we do have a bit, we investigate them, we friend them on Facebook so we can actually look at their page, see what they've done, just to make sure that they're committed to
anti-racist education and we don't want to let a bunch of trolls through the gate because that is a risk. And so we're trying to be pretty strong gatekeepers around our actual core volunteers, just because we want to have a group of people that can really do the most good in the most places.
Yeah.
Well, ladies, thank you very much for what you're doing. I think it is a very important endeavor, and I love what you're doing, so thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you, and thanks for the feedback. Again, we're receptive and open to feedback. I know that this is going to be a little bit of trial and error because it's something kind of new, so we invite that as well.
Absolutely. And for those watching this video, you hear what the ladies have said. All their information will be placed in this blog, and if you have feedback for them, you'll have all the information that you need to provide them whatever feedback you have to offer them, and of course they'll decide what's best for the project that they're working on. Ladies, thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you, Egberto.